I'd just like to introduce Wayne Smith, who is the former Director of IT and Information and Security from Birmingham Airport. I'd just like to thank you for taking the time to speak with us today, because obviously at Sutton Coldfield Training, many of our learners are adults progressing through vocational or skills-based courses. So we just get an insight of different job roles, different career paths, and how people have achieved different qualifications and moved on to different career routes. So can I just ask you to tell us a bit about your career journey and what led you to the role that you was?
Yeah, absolutely. So when I did my O-levels, or GCSEs as they're called these days, I wasn't quite sure what I wanted to do, so I went on and did A-levels, and after that I knew I didn't want to go to university and do the traditional path to get into industry. So I just wrote letters to local companies. One of them went to my local power station, who then passed my letter on to their head office, and they said to come to do an interview in computer programming. Now, I'd never seen a computer in my life at that point, let alone programmed one. So I went to the interview. They said they would fully train me in the role, and so I sort of fell into the whole IT area. And they then started sending me back to college one day a week to do qualifications, and ultimately got a degree in IT by doing that route through a 3-year day release session with the universities. Now, these days, you'd probably call that a modern apprenticeship, but those days it was just the training scheme that the nationalised industries used. So, yeah, it was good.
So when you talk about the changes there, obviously from when you did your day release, which, like you say, would be an apprenticeship now, have you seen many changes in relation to the job role itself, IT security? Obviously now, I'd imagine, especially Birmingham Airport, there's so many changes throughout the years now that you've witnessed.
Yeah, in the early days, IT security wasn't really a thing. You know, there was sort of tales of people embezzling money by taking off fractions of a penny from the payroll, but it wasn't really a big thing back then. It was only when the internet came to pass that people started connecting computers together that IT security became an issue. And it was another one of these accidental areas where I fell into cybersecurity and IT security, sort of around about the early 2000s. And I was invited to go to a meeting over in Paris to discuss the whole cybersecurity issue. And I thought, yeah, I can go along, you know, and talk about what we're doing at Birmingham. I turned up, and it turned out that I was talking on behalf of all the airports in Europe. And no one had actually told me that bit until I turned up. And it was one of those things where you have the little microphone in front of you with the red button, you know, and translators, and I was a bit shocked, but that's how I fell into that by accident. But from there, I then sat on committees at European level that produced documents for EU governments, and then I worked at other levels where eventually we were producing cybersecurity regulation for the European Union, even after the UK had left the EU, which was quite an interesting situation to be in. So yes, it was another one of these areas where I sort of accidentally fell into it. But it was a growing area, and it still is a growing area today. So much so at the airport, we started taking on modern apprenticeships in both on the IT side and on the cybersecurity side. And we've had people who've done really well in those sectors and have flourished in their careers since they've started.
I was just going to move on to talk about how Birmingham Airport supports apprenticeships. Is there many roles, or is there like a high percentage of staff that have gone through the apprenticeship route for the airport?
It's getting to be more and more. I wanted people to do something similar to the route that I did, and not necessarily go for graduates. And even just a few years ago now, probably, I don't know, 10 years maybe, that they weren't called apprenticeships back then. It was just me trying to replicate what I'd done. And it was difficult to find providers that we could work with. It was different to find colleges that did, you know, day release type thing. But we did manage to find them. But since then, they've become more formalised, and more departments now throughout the airport do take on apprentices, should I say, on a regular basis.
So obviously remaining completely biased, do you think an apprenticeship can bring the same value to an individual as a university degree can?
Yes, I think it depends on the individual and what discipline they're going to go into. Now, if they want to become a doctor, then this traditional route is probably the best way to go. But for other areas, I say to people, you're going to come out after 3 years, you'll have a degree, like your friends and colleagues will have, but you'll have none of the debt that's associated with it, but the company will have funded the place. And more importantly, you'll have a number of years, so 3 years commercial experience. And in the IT and cybersecurity world, that's almost as valuable, if not more valuable, than the qualification you're coming out with at the end of it. Because that's what the next employer is looking for, or the current employer, if you stay where you did the apprenticeship. So I think it depends on the role, and it depends on the individual as well. It's not all a bed of roses, however, because you have to do the work. You have to spend the 1 day a week doing the actual study. You have to do the assignments in your own time, and you have to have a willingness to want to get a good mark, because that's often linked to the employment contract as well.
So do you think there's any skills gaps or challenges at the minute in that industry for people to get into? So if they're interested in cybersecurity, IT, do you think there's any challenges that they're going to come across stepping into that industry or moving into that industry?
Not at the moment. I think there's more positions out there for the cybersecurity than there are people to fill them. I think the issue is getting that first role. So, if you do come out of university or some other educational establishment, then, you've got to show that you understand the real challenges to industry, and not just on an academic basis, but on an actual real world basis. So if you've gone through the apprenticeship route, then you've probably worked with a company doing that role. And that's the big tick in the box you get for when you're doing your shortlisting or doing the interview selection. That will get you a long way with just that commercial experience. But at the moment, it's a growing area, which means the salaries are really quite good. So I don't see many challenges in that area as long as you've done the right qualification and got the right experience.
How do you think an employer can make an apprenticeship look appealing? Because if you talk about IT, sometimes you automatically think you're sitting on a computer. Do you know what I mean? There's not a diverse range of tasks to do. How can an employer make that apprenticeship look appealing to somebody?
I think that depends on the organisation. If you went to a huge organisation and you were on a help desk, with a headset on and just telling people how to switch it off and back on all day, that's not really very satisfying. If you go to a mid-sized company, then by the very nature of that company, you probably have to get more involved in things. And at the airport, I always say to the people who are on the support desk that they're the front face of the IT department. So if they're impolite or not professional, that reflects on the whole department. And the guys and girls who are on that front line then become the most well-known people in IT. It doesn't matter about the senior people, the team leaders, the managers. People don't talk to them. They talk to the guys on the service desk or the help desk, and they become the ones that people want to talk to.
Opportunities in itself, isn't it?
Yeah, networking through all the different departments, and we have had people who've gone on from IT department to work in other teams. Recently, there was one young guy who went from IT and became an air traffic controller. By the connections, finding out about the connections that he'd done through his job in the IT team. So it is possible to do that. And also being on a service desk, interacting with people, you have to become or have to be a people person.
Yeah.
You have to be confident at a relatively young age to interact with people of all levels, not just the same level as you. Interact with managers, interact with directors, sometimes board members, just to help sort out their problems, to hold their hands through certain processes, maybe do a bit of training with them on certain applications, whatever it is. So you have to become a people person as well.
Perfect. So finally then, if I can ask, if you could go back in time and give your younger self a piece of careers advice, what would you give yourself?
Oh, that's very hard. I would say I would probably do the same thing again, but I would say don't be afraid of moving company. It can be scary, but it's also an opportunity. And the sort of accepted practice is that if you move companies every, say, 4 or 5 years in the IT world, that's the way you maximise your value. Because at each move you negotiate hopefully a rise. And these days, people don't tend to stop in a job for life, like I did. I was at the airport for 32 years, and I progressed through the levels. But the other way to do it is to move outside of different companies, move around a bit, maximise your income at those levels, and maximise your experience at the same time.
Fantastic.
That's brilliant, thank you.
Thank you again for taking the time to speak with us.
No problem. Thank you.